Greetings, wishy-washy, feely-weely beings. I am Patrick Smith. Welcome back to Disenthrall. Today we have a cool talk with my friend Larken Rose. Welcome to the show.
Yeah,
thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I already have my own.
I've been in a habit of moving the mic. So yesterday or day before, I forget which, we were sitting down at a table here at Anarchapulco, and a lot of people always surround one or both of us, primarily him. Just wherever he is, he's generally surrounded by people talking to him. And this time we were having a meal, and some people were wanting to, I guess, pitch their conception of objective rights, or no, it was objective ethics.
Morality.
Objective morality. We needed to define all these terms before we go anywhere. So, I'm hearing them talk, and I'm disagreeing mostly with the person talking to him, and not quite getting what Larken is responding to him with. And I was like, wow, I can't believe I've never actually had this fundamental talk with the Rose. So I invited him up here to do that today, just to kind of talk through what objective ethics or objective morality is. And so to get started, I would like us to agree, first of all, on the definition of objective. Let's go with objective morality.
That might take a week, but let's go for it.
Maybe not. So I see people using the word objective three different ways, and I think that's what creates most of the disagreements on this topic.
Right.
I see them use it as, when they say objective morality, they interpret it to mean that the person is saying that morality exists tangibly in the world.
Right.
And the second one is that they say that if you're claiming to have an objective morality, it means that it is applied to all humans, whether or not they want it to be applied to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if it isn't automatically applied to everyone and functions on everyone, then it can't be called objective. That's the second way I've seen them use it. The way I use it is sort of it's like an anti-subjective. So it means something that if you have an objective something, it means you have something that isn't affected by anything subjective. It isn't affected by emotions, feelings, opinions, what you want, what you need. It just it could be a math equation.
Right.
You put the same inputs in, you always get the same outputs. That's what I consider objective. So when I say objective morality, all I'm saying is that, using the non-aggression principle, for example, we can put together sort of a math equation of human interaction that you put in the same inputs, and you will always achieve the same, was that action moral or immoral? Mm-hmm. Every time. Works the same way every time. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what your intention was. It doesn't matter what you were trying to do or hoping to do. It always gives you an objective, unchanging answer. I shouldn't use the word in the definition. But so what do you think?
I totally agree with the third one. I often describe it a little bit differently. And I'll preface this by admitting that I describe it in such a way that it basically makes more problems than answers. But as a little bit of a weird tangent, there are things you can know even though it immediately makes you wonder about a million other things. I'll use my weird example. I bring this up when it comes to evolution and understanding the mechanism of that and stuff, which is, I leave home and there's a pile of Legos on my floor. I come back and there's this big elaborate Lego house. And I presume from that something or somebody intended that. I see intention in the Lego house. Doesn't mean I know who it is. Doesn't mean I know how they did it. Maybe they had nano robots that snuck under my door. No, million different ways, million different people it could be. So in that case, if somebody says, well, who made it? No freaking idea. And yet I don't need to know who made it to say, I think there's reason to think there's intention. Now, that comes up in biology and stuff. But I think there is indication in humanity, in how we function and how we think, that, however I word this, it immediately makes half a dozen problems. The universe intends for us to be a certain way. And I refer to it as universal intention because I don't know what else to call it. I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in a big guy in the sky with levers and switches making things happen. But I do believe there is a level of consciousness and intention way the heck beyond me and way the heck beyond anything I can comprehend. And I think we are supposed to be in line with that. And again, the supposing requires a supposer. Just like the should requires an intender. Like something must want us to be that way.
Can I interrupt you? Because if you go too far, I'll miss things that I thought.
Sure.
Can I interrupt you because I want to make sure I don't miss things
Absolutely.
that I'm thinking of? So
Because it's already infinitely complicated, so feel free.
yeah, I've never tried to. I never tried to assume that if I found an equation for objective morality, that I've never even tried to think of like who created the equation, who made the universe accept this equation as reasonable or logical, right?
Right.
So that's a new thought for me. You said that it necessitates an intender. Is that what you said? An intender?
Yeah, the concept of a should, like should in order to what? And so, we can have individually like, I want this to happen, therefore I should do this. But to say people should do this regardless of their individual opinions and regardless of their everything else, it's like, well, then should according to what? If it isn't should according to the individual's like own whatever he wants to do or accomplish, who's having the should? Where's it coming from? Like, what's the measure of what should be happening? What's the cause of the should?
To have an objective morality, do you have to have a should follow it?
Yes, I believe you do. And the reason is people can talk about, like, you may have heard of the, universally preferential behavior, whatever it is.
UPB, universally preferable.
Preferable, that's what it is. That's close enough. And the thing is, even that assumes, like, we'd rather get along, and if we all behave in this certain way, it works much better to get along. The question is there actually some abstract but objective reason why getting along is better than just killing each other? Now, we all like it better than killing each other. Well, I hope all of us do. Occasionally a sociopath might like us killing each other. Mostly we like it better, but that's still the individuals saying, well, I like it better, I like getting along better, I like getting along better. But is there an abstract thing in the universe that prefers humanity to get along rather than murder and torture and oppress each other?
Why does there need to be?
Well, there needs to be in order for there to be an all-encompassing should. There can be the individual has what it wants, but to say there is a should overall that applies regardless of individual preference and interest, the should implies what you should use the word in the definition, what you should do, what you're supposed to do, what it's good to do, not just to achieve your ends or whatever your personal opinion is, but that something else, like the measure of something else is this is what we're supposed to be. And it's like the other way to say it is, if this is what humanity is supposed to be, what is supposing it?
Are you saying that to try and make to make one conception of objective morality apply to everyone, you have to have an entity sort of outside doing the applying?
Almost.
I'm trying to repeat what you're saying back to you in my language. Okay.
The answer to what I'm pretty sure you meant is yes, except I don't actually think it's an outside thing. I think it's built into all of it, which is sort of a weird distinction. So the answer was actually yes.
I kind of think we agree with really different words.
Yeah, and that may be the case.
Sorry, go ahead.
But to me, and this is something I hardly ever talk about in public because it mostly makes confusion and people argue about something. Like, if somebody gets that we shouldn't be attacking each other, we should be getting along, it's like, cool. I don't care why you think that. As long as you think that, we get along fine. But when it comes to the actual philosophical foundation, I think none of it, at the end of the day, none of it makes sense without accepting a universal intention. As in, it's not my opinion, it's not just my own interest and your interest, or even the cumulative general opinion, but there really is what we're supposed to be and what we're not supposed to be. And the thing is, that immediately makes it complicated and weird, like, well, who made it that way? Or what is intending it? Because intention, like, requires awareness and consciousness, and for there to be a thing that isn't any of us intending for us to be some way, and people can call it God, but usually to me that's just, well, I don't know what it is, but I'll stick a label on it. Well, okay, now we have a label on it. That didn't really help. But it's so, because it leads into so many sort of philosophical challenges of, well, where does it come from and blah, blah, blah. usually the conversation derails, and I don't think you need to know where it comes from to figure out whether there really is a should built into the universe, that humanity is supposed to be this, even though I don't know where the universe came from, and I don't know what it is that made it supposed to be that. But the thing is, and here's the analogy I like to use, this actually came up at the dinner. If you have a big arena with a bunch of robots in it, and let's say a bunch of people like each made a robot and put in a program, what it's trying to accomplish. This one's trying to eat all the other robots. This one's trying to build a house. This one's trying to do that. So each little robot has stuff in it that it's trying to accomplish. And you could, on the individual basis, you could call that a should. The robot is like, I should stay alive long enough to go through my program and accomplish the ends. And so they each have their own should, and they have their individual people that decided the should. If this arena is doing its thing and the robots are all doing something, and then somebody drops a bomb and blows all the robots up, the owners might be a little bit upset, but nobody is like, oh my God! But if you have a bunch of human beings, each with their own priorities and their interests and what they want to accomplish, and then you blow them to smithereens, most of us instinctively go, that's horrible! Because we know we're not robots. We know we're something else on some weird level that's really hard to define. It isn't Newtonian. It isn't just physical stuff. But I think a lot of people who consider themselves very rational and scientific, because that stuff is so freaking hard to even think about and talk about, they want to pretend it's not there. They basically want to say that we're squishy robots. You know, like Dawkins, Richard Dawkins describes us as squishy robots. I forget his exact wording, and I think he's absolutely wrong about that. I mean, we have the squishy robot pieces, but there's something else there that's the us and the consciousness and the free will. Only, how do you physically measure that? You don't. And how do you measure, how do you physically measure a should? You can't. It's like you can't get an ought from an is. Like, I'm going to measure all the dimensions of this robot and then figure out what it should be. Like, should be according to what? So I think the should is a separate thing from the sort of, mechanical mushy machines we're in. And most of us sense that, but because it's such a weird thing to try to think about and fit into our normal analytical, assessment of, because we're really good at science and math and physical, figuring out this and magnetism and gravity and all that. But when it comes to why are we aware? That's really freaking weird for me to be aware of myself. How do you even begin to think about that? And I think that's so creepy for a lot of people that they literally try to talk themselves out of it. And some people will even say consciousness is an illusion and free will is an illusion because they're too damn weird to think about in the realms we're good at thinking about.
I want to try and steer away from the free will discussion because it will probably be here for 3 more hours.
Yeah, that's an even bigger.
But I come at this from such a different angle. This is really cool. So let me try and describe my conception. So I start with what is morality? Morality is a term that we use to describe judging behavior. At any point, if you disagree with one of my definitions of something, speak up.
Sure.
So it's a process of judging behavior. And out of that process, called, I guess, morality or moral philosophy, we determine a result. So behavior XYZ, person did this with this to this other person in this interaction. And using this equation, we can determine or label that interaction good, or at least, I like to say not evil. Right. Evil or not evil. Right. I think good is subjective. We can talk about that if you want, but I think good... I know
why you make that distinction. I'd
cool.
Go along.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I think good is subjective. So I think a moral philosophy the equation tells us if an interaction is evil or not evil. Mm-hmm. And that word evil and that concept evil is powerful to humans. Mm. Now, maybe this is where it interfaces with what you were saying. I don't know why that word is powerful or that concept is powerful to humans. But when you call someone or label somebody evil or say you did evil, that is effective. That hits the person deeply. Right. And maybe it'll scare them. Maybe it'll completely make them rethink their whole life, or maybe it'll make them drop to the ground and start apologizing and trying to figure out how to fix what they did wrong.
Right.
Or if they're an evil person, they'll be like, I don't give a shit. What do you think? Yeah.
To very briefly interject, evil to me is synonymous with contrary to the universal intention.
What's the universal intention?
We should let you finish your thought before we get into that.
So what we then need to look at is, over the course of history, the equation that we use to run an instance of human interaction through to determine evil has changed. Like initially it was God kings basically saying what God told them what it was, And
that worked out great.
and then it was, like the Catholic Church or Muhammad or whatever, all the religions, it went to the religious figureheads. They would give you the equation and tell you whether an action was evil. And it almost, for some reason, humanity didn't notice that the equation, even today in the Catholic Church, changes quite often.
Right.
And that doesn't seem to bother them. But what is evil changes, and that doesn't concern them. What just concerns them is the people that are called evil, because that word is stuck in our DNA's craw somehow, and this might go to what you were talking about. We don't want to be evil. We want to be good. Most people want to be good, or at least not evil.
Right.
And so what I've been trying to do for several years now is to take that word away from them. Because when it's a God king, it's subjective. It's just what he wants.
Right.
When it's the Catholic Church, it's subjective. It's just what those assholes want. I want to find and apply an objective equation. Objective, that's where the word comes in. An unchanging equation, not based on feelings, not based on what the Pope wants. I want to, and in that we have the non-aggression principle. And it is an objective equation. In every interaction, we can run a set of circumstances through and get an answer. And then take that powerful word and finally, for the first time in human existence, stick it on something that some asshole's trying to be powerful power mongers or whatever.
Right.
Take that word away from them and stick it to something that they can't mess with because it's objective.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to do. And in a way, I'm retooling the word evil away from other people that have tried to define it. And I'm trying to say, hey, just like everything else, like we're talking about gravity, we're talking about all this other stuff that has objective definitions. Why aren't we fighting to find an objective definition of evil so that it can't be used for evil?
I'm all in favor of your stated goal, and I want to make it uncomfortable.
Hell yeah.
Right. The trying to come up with an equation for evil, do all of the personal opinions and preferences and views of it combined have any effect on what evil is? Like if everybody tomorrow decided that killing and eating their neighbors is perfectly fine, would that have any effect on what is actually evil?
Well, I'm not arbitrarily answer your question. No. So if you had a follow up to that, you can go ahead.
Go ahead.
I also want to explain why I have chosen the non-aggression principle, not just because it's the thing that libertarians like to talk about.
Right.
It's the only equation, and this kind of goes to UPB. Some of the stuff he talked about UPB is evidence of this. It's the only equation that exists that is universalizable, meaning it can be used by all people in all times and all places.
Right.
So if we're going to pick an equation to use to be the moral rule, it has to be valid, usable in all times and all places by all people.
Here's where I'm going to find fault with the UPB.
Oh boy. Oh, no, I thought you were going to say nap. I was like, what?
No.
Okay. I'm sure you can
let's just go attack people. No, because I agree with all that. But here's the thing. Even the thing of if we all do this, we get along and it works. And if some of us don't, it doesn't work. There's conflict, there's violence, and there's this and that and the other thing. That's all fine. But even that is based on the premise that there's something better about us all getting along and behaving, within the confines of the non-aggression principle or whatever, that is better than me killing people and stealing their stuff. And you can say, well, it doesn't work if everybody does that. And if I'm an evil bastard, I can say, well, I don't want everybody to do it. I just want to do it myself. Have all you dumbasses be civilized and peaceful while I kick your ass and steal your stuff. And you can say, you're a hypocrite. And as a sociopath, I can say, I don't care. Is there something inherently bad about being a hypocrite? Is there something that says I should feel an obligation to behave the same way I want you to? Like the tiger doesn't feel an obligation to behave the same way he wants the gazelle to behave. He wants the gazelle to get eaten. And I think it's one of the examples of we instinctively know that, well, peaceful coexistence is what we're supposed to be. And that you can't really get from universally preferential behavior, because the preferential just means, well, it works for all of us if we all do this. Yeah, but if all but one of us do this and one goes around killing and stealing their stuff and is good at it, that works for him. It's not too good for his victims, but it works for him. Is there something inherently bad about it working for him and not his victims? I say it is, but you can't get there just by UPB, because it assumes that we should all be living the same way. And that's an assumption. I think it's correct.
I think you're rebutting Kant's categorical more than UPB specifically.
Okay.
Kant's categorical imperative is behave as if you behave in a way that you want everyone else to behave.
Right.
Which is kind of what you're saying.
Golden rule, like there's a bunch of variations.
The tiny distinction is that, like, if you have a murderer that thinks it's okay to murder because it works for him, and you go up and say, okay, well, I'm going to murder you now. And he says, no, you can't. I disagree. I don't want you to murder me. It's, well, your behavior is self-contradictory.
Yeah, and he can say, I don't give a crap.
Well, that's all moral philosophy. He doesn't have to. That's the second definition of objective that I'm not a fan of. Like,
yeah.
Just because we found an equation that works, that can function all the time for everyone.
Right.
There's literally nothing to do with whether or not people choose to apply it.
Right. The concept of right and wrong and good and bad and should and shouldn't is all, it's a value judgment, like of somebody's actions. And either there's a specific in order to, like, we can't be attacking each other if we want to have a peaceful civilization. But to say it's bad to do X without an in order to turns it, which I think is totally true, but it turns it into a weird conversation. Like, I think it's inherently bad to attack people and steal their stuff. And it isn't just because on a practical basis it won't work that well, or because I'm expecting other people to behave differently than I behave. I think it's weirder and more abstract than that. I think it's because, again, this will cause half a dozen problems. The universe doesn't want us.
I'm trying to avoid addressing that.
I know.
Because I think like the stuff that I would have to say. Like, you got any proof of that? Like, what are you talking about? What universe? Like,
yeah, and that's the thing, because there isn't. Because I
know you're Larken Rose, but you really have the text message conversation with the universe?
No,
like,
and that's the thing. But that's why it came up earlier. Is I can look at a bunch of stuff and think I have reason to believe that there really is a universe wanting it. I mean, a lot of that is we're talking as if it's a person, because what other terms are you going to use? Like the idea of a creator, when people argue about was there a creator to the universe? Because people are sort of the highest thing we think. We sort of think in terms of, was there some guy somewhere who made the universe? And I say, well, no, but other than a creator, I don't know what other word to use for it, as whatever the heck force made this happen. And I can't nearly comprehend what it is, but I think the reason people view God as a person is because what else is he going to be, an armadillo? But he isn't a person. He's not, whatever. We don't even have a pronoun that works. It is so far beyond us that there's only the vaguest things.
It's Zer.
It's Zer. Okay. Well, then we're done.
Okay.
Cool. Now we're fixed. But it's so far beyond us that talking about it, we immediately limit it and make it completely wrong, because, and the reason people, picture it, God is like a big guy, because, like, what else are you even going to try to picture? A force that can make a universe, like I can't, pretty sure you can't, haven't checked yet, but pretty sure you can't. And so what else do we have to compare it to? People is the most, advanced, intelligent, creative thing that we see on this, level. So when we talk about intention of the universe, we talk about it like we have to use terms as if it's a person intending it. And I don't think it's a person. I think it's actually built into everything.
So maybe I'm going to describe what you just said differently. So what if it's just much simpler than that? What if things tend towards their lowest energy state available? So like if you put a ball on top of if you have two hills and you put a ball on top of one, it'll roll down and it'll kind of go back and forth until it settles at the lowest energy state.
Entropy, yeah.
Also from that we have all logic. The reason that we're using to have this conversation is derived from the consistency of the universe, right? So that's where everything starts. A equals A every day, all day, at all times, in all places. So those are direct observations from the universe. What if just the simple reciprocity of something as simple as the non-aggression principle just is sort of the lowest energy state? And if you kind of think about it, it is. Don't hurt other people. They don't hurt you. It's kind of a reciprocal lowest energy state of human behavior. Does it need to be a person or does it need to have an intent? What if it's just the manifestation of the objectivity of reality?
Well, if you're looking at the Newtonian thing alone, it doesn't need to. And a bunch of people tried to describe all of reality as we're just machines and we do this and this is what works because this is, we're a social species and it works better if we're not killing each other and we cooperate instead. And they tried to describe it in those terms. And the thing is, I think you immediately hit limits that don't account for a lot of what it means to be a human being when you try to describe us as squishy robots. Plenty of people try to do it. And it's not that, those things don't make sense. It's that I think there's a level that, the level that, again, this is a conversation we can't get into, the level that involves consciousness and free will and awareness and intention that you can't really get out of a robot. I'm sure you know enough about computer programming to know you can't even make a random number. A computer can't make a random number. It can use a bunch of things to make something that for us looks random enough. Like it'll go through a whole bunch of numbers until you press a button and then that one goes up. But you can't actually make a program that will randomly choose between one or two. You make one that looks like it does, but it's never random. We can choose, which is already this bizarre miracle. And some people say we can't. And that's the free will thing.
Is this unavoidable in this discussion?
I'll try to keep avoiding it.
Okay.
We'll see how far we can avoid it. But I think there is an aspect to us that is not at all the Newtonian level, that is not at all the machinery. Laws of physics apply to us. That's part of us. I basically view us as I kind of hate the word spiritual because it's kind of this fluffy, non-meaning thing. But it's, for lack of a better term, I think we really are a spirit that possesses a physical machine. And that our awareness and our free will is something way weirder than can be explained with the physical stuff, even like the intricacies of the brain and all the chemical reactions and synapses and all that.
Do you have any evidence of that spirit?
Only indirectly. Like, I don't claim to know, here's exactly what God looks like. And that's one of the biggest cop-outs that I see religions all over the place. Like, I think they sense we're not just supposed to be violent animals, we're supposed to be something else. And then they make up these big weird mythologies based on nothing. And, there's however many 100 different mythologies there are about that. But again, I have only the indirect evidence of what I see and the way people behave and the way people think. For example, when you look at the kings who say, God made me your king, I can do whatever I want. Along the way, certain people were like, I don't think this is right. Well, they don't think it's right based on what? And they might just be saying, well, this doesn't really help my own interest very well to be that guy's slave. But I think it's more than that. I think there are a lot of examples throughout history of human beings having so many terms I have to, I'm trying to keep it in terms that normal people use. But a thing I refer to as direct access, which is basically we all are connected in some way to the universal intention. You can't figure out in a math equation, but we sense, like if you see somebody like murdering children, you don't have to go, wait, let me figure this out and do some logic. You immediately go, that's freaking horrible. Because the universal intention is saying that's freaking horrible. And it doesn't matter if it affects you or whether you think you're in danger. If you see video from the other side of the world that is no threat to you, we still viscerally react, that's horrible, that's bad, that's not what we're supposed to be. And just about, other than sociopaths, we all immediately feel that. And I think it's like another sense. Like, let's say you could sense magnetism for some animals can. So let's pretend that you individually can sense magnetism. And you're like, yeah, there's these fields and I can actually feel them. And everyone else is around like, what does it look like? Nothing. What does it sound like? Nothing. What does it smell like? Nothing. What does it feel like? Nothing. Well, then you're just making it up because the senses I'm used to relying on don't include that. And the six senses cannot determine morality. They can determine what is in the physical sense, but I think we have a different sense that's like a whole different level of, I don't even know what to call it, that is in tune with the universal intention. And when we're slaves for the feudal lord, something in us tells us, this isn't really how things are supposed to be.
What if it's like way less spiritual than that? Like one of the first things, I'll tell a story. So this is from my talk. My son, he's 6. He loves skateboarding. He's just now learning. He's not terribly good at it yet, but we go on family trips to the skate park. We're sitting on the side of the skate park, and my son is across the skate park. And, there's all age ranges of kids, most that go to public school and have all kinds of issues. And so I hear screaming across the skate park, and I get up and I look, and my son he's on his skateboard, straight up trying to run over a kid twice his size. And so I get up and I run across, and as I run up, I hear him say, well, if you get to do something to me that I don't like, then I get to do something to you that you don't like. And he's just like pedaling as hard as he can to run this giant, and the kid's just kind of he's just stepping out of the way.
He doesn't even care.
And I ran up, I'm like, what happened? What happened? And the big kid was squirting him with a water bottle. And he said, no, stop it. And the kid didn't.
Yeah.
And so he just, out of his mouth comes this lesson that I've been teaching him since they were, single-celled organisms almost, right? Like, if you don't want somebody to do something to you, don't do it to them.
Yep.
And they get that at such a young age. And what if it's that? What if that thing that you're talking about is just that basic reciprocal logic? It's just this no shit, lowest energy state position of just don't do it to me, I won't do it to you. If they're able to get it before they can really even talk, and have conversations,
the thing
doesn't need I'm just saying that doesn't need a spiritual intention argument, like spirit inhabiting their body. Right. It's just such basic logic.
Yeah.
Why do we need more than that?
That doesn't, and that makes sense and it works, and that's sort of in the realm of, if we all live by these rules, it works better for all of us. We're not constantly in fear of being attacked, and it works. We all benefit, except maybe the occasional sociopath. We benefit better if we cooperate and we, do unto others as you would have done unto them, blah, blah, blah. Or, sorry, whatever. You know what it is.
Yeah.
It's been a long week. So that's one thing. And I think, even, chimpanzees and dolphins and stuff probably have that level of stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think humanity really is a fundamentally different species because we have an element that's way weirder than that. And this is a weird proof, so I have to explain this carefully. I think the existence of religion, even though all of them get it wrong, is evidence that human beings feel there's something else. It isn't just, this is a good way for animals to coexist. And so many movements, as humanity progressed and people thought, maybe we shouldn't treat women like property. Maybe we shouldn't pretend to own people because they look different. Maybe we shouldn't do this. It's like they're feeling, and because they make it into these weird mythologies, it's like they sense that it isn't just, well, on a practical level, it works better to, if you have robots like artificial intelligence and they interact and they figure out how to cooperate, and I could imagine that, they're not going to make up a religion. They're not going to suddenly bow to some weird god somewhere. I think that is the religions are basically humanity starting to get glimpses of that extra sense we have, and then immediately botching it up and confusing it, making it into an authority thing. But I think so what you described totally happens, and it even happens in other species, but there's a level to it above that that human beings, they don't always see it. And a lot of human history is people not seeing it or not paying attention to it and just go, I'm going to keep my head down and do whatever serves me. But over and over again in history, you get this weird phenomenon of people go, well, they're not doing it to me, but I can't let them do it to that guy anymore. And that is counter your own interests. That's counter survival to say, I was doing just fine, but I'm going to put myself in harm's way to help that person. And I think one of the reasons Christianity became this huge thing, and I'm not a Christian, I don't even know if Jesus ever existed at all. If he did, he wasn't the Son of God. I'll just offend a whole bunch of people in one sentence. But I think the reason that spread so much is because so many people feel they feel in tune with the very basic things Jesus said, like don't even be a jerk to people who are mean to you. And to most of us now it seems, well, that's sort of obvious, but that wasn't obvious to a lot of humanity for the longest time. And the reason that's just so profound for most people is because it really is tapping into a level that isn't just sort of sophisticated animal interaction. It's seeing something that we're supposed to be that's way different. And I actually view the universe as if there have been several huge discrete steps. One is when energy, well, the first I guess would be when everything happened. I have no idea why that happened. The next is when energy became matter. I have no idea how it happened, but suddenly you have arrangements of energy, which are just astoundingly complex and intricate and do amazing things. And then matter to life, where suddenly it's not just some rocks, it's things running around and they can like take in sensory perception. And I think the next step that really is a fundamentally different thing is life to humanity, where the animal species got to the point where suddenly they were able to get an awareness of what the universe wants. I know all the problems that come from that phrase.
I don't even know what to do with that. It's just like...
I know. And to a large degree, I don't either.
Okay.
So it's just one of those things that I think the universe wants stuff.
Okay.
And I can't go, and this book will explain why. I can only sort of give hints and pieces of why I think there really is a universal intention, a universal wanting of what we're supposed to be. And I think a lot of people throughout history have had glimpses of that, and it turns into religion, and it turns into people saying stuff, and a lot of people go, whoa, yeah, that's like profound and important. And I think basically humanity like started 5 minutes ago. Like what humanity is supposed to be, we're getting these tiny little glimpses of something we don't nearly understand. We hardly ever think about it. When we do think about it, we make it into these confusing mythologies that then turn into authoritarian, let's go kill everybody who doesn't agree with a pacifist, that was awesome. Crusade. If you don't agree with this pacifist, we'll torture you to death. Okay. So it's not like we're good at it yet or understand it yet. And it's not like I pretend to understand, here's how it all works. But I see lots of hints all over the place, including even in just biological evolution, that the universe has intent to a degree that I can't explain. It's really dang weird, but there are a lot of things that make that what I consider to be very obvious to me. And that includes intent of what we're supposed to be. I don't know what's doing the supposing. I don't know how to define it. By definition, I can't comprehend it because I can't do that. It's like asking a flea to comprehend you. It's like, it's not going to, no matter how hard it thinks, if fleas think.
I think we both agree that we're trending towards more and more peace.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. You can zoom out pretty far and you still see the trend line going to more voluntary interaction, less involuntary authority, and more of like a valid view on that. Thanks in large part to people like you doing things like Candles in the Dark. But I guess my opinion of it is just very practical. Like it's like you have A equals A, the non-contradiction axiom, which is just the most fundamental thing that you can derive from the universe. And then just one step above that is the reciprocity. It's just like, it's so stupid simple. Like you said, you compared, I think, kind of your conception to complex human interaction. I think it's not complex. I think it's like, it's just so stupid simple. Mm-hmm. Like, to say that somebody can't do something you're doing to them is really dumb. Like, it's just fundamentally, simple-mindedly, it's dumb.
It's not going to work.
And so when a peasant...
Because the other person will say, what the hell? Why do you get to do it and I don't?
And so when a peasant looks at a king, you know, the fundamental, like, it's just such a stupid, simple part of existence. And most of this is what you talk about in your seminar. Like, we all interact voluntarily every day, and we understand and we behave according to this rule. And it's just like layers and layers and years of indoctrination that make us blind in certain areas to this simple behavioral rule, right? Which is the non-aggression principle or reciprocity, or all the things we're talking about. I don't see. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you it this way: are we trying to make a distinction without a difference? Like,
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think there really is something fundamentally weird happening.
So what would the universe's intention lead me to judge a behavior differently than a reciprocal interaction, like basic axiom? Like, where's the difference between our two positions? Like, what would your system say?
I don't think there has to be a difference.
So your system wouldn't say something is not evil that mine would, or vice versa?
I don't think so. Oh, in fact, the evil, not an evil, like I said, I'm pretty sure I know what you mean. Let's bring that up because I think that ties in with it.
Okay.
So there's the evil, which is violent aggression, and then there's not evil, which is not violent aggression. There's lots of not violent aggression.
Real hard, folks.
Yeah, rough to figure this stuff out. There's lots of not aggression things, in brackets, that are stupid. They don't help with relationships. They don't help with your health. They don't help your mental health. But they don't count as evil because you're not violently aggressing against anybody.
I'm so glad that we agree on that. Like, that's fundamental.
Yeah, so it's fundamental.
Yeah.
All of those other things about we should do this, like it's nice to help people in need. You don't have, in one sense, you don't have an obligation. Like, nobody has the right to force you to go help somebody in need. But it's sort of good if you do. Mm-hmm. And it's sort of good if you treat people a certain way, not just don't violently attack them, but a little bit more than that. And all these different things. And I think that is us sort of realizing what we're supposed to be,
okay.
Not just what allows for peaceful coexistence, but like, it's so hard to even talk
I'm defining the negative, the evil. And it sounds like you're trying to put a solid definition on the source of good.
Yeah, except I'm not even pretending it's a solid definition.
Okay.
I'm just saying I think there really is a good. Mm-hmm. I mean, it starts with don't do the evil stuff. Like, we're still working on that.
Yeah, we got that. Yeah.
That's the focus right now. Until we get past that, that's kind of the thing that matters.
Yeah.
But beyond that, and this is why I don't bother talking about this. Like, let's get past the stop doing evil part.
Yes, please.
But it's like, here's an example. And I'll just see how you respond to this.
Oh, boy.
So society's going along and people are like, we're trying to prosper and we're trying to cooperate. And it's more fun if we're not killing each other because that's kind of stressful and painful and stuff.
More fun, yeah.
And somebody comes along and says, I don't care if the rest of you like this and approve. I'm going to do this. You can think what you want about me. I'm going to press this button and set off a bunch of neutron bombs. And I just killed 90% of the planet. Didn't destroy the stuff. So the good news is the 10% that's still left, you're all rich as hell. There's houses all over the place. There's cars all over the place. You got all sorts of wealth, physical wealth, because I just knocked off 90% of you and left all the stuff. And so, and by the way, while I was at it, I knocked off all the sick people and the people who, have disabilities and are having a rough time. Basically, I'm high-tech Hitler. Now you have the 10% left. They're really damn rich. You have cool houses all over the place for free. Just go get some. There's dead people all over the place, but whatever. Throw them in a ditch. Was that immoral? I think it's massively, hugely immoral based on, what I think about universal intention. We're not supposed to do that. But you can't deny there'd be a pretty damn big benefit to the 10% you didn't kill. I mean, they're going to be upset because they're going to know people who are dead and stuff. Given the argument that statists love to do of, in the long run, for the common good, now we have a stronger species and a stronger economy, and we're all rich, and we're all doing better.
There's a little movie about this recently. It's a small movie.
Oh, okay, cool.
It was Avengers.
Oh,
Where he snapped.
okay,
He snapped
that
the
thing. He only did half.
Yeah,
I'm worse than him.
yeah,
I
you're
knocked
way
off
worse.
90%.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, can you define for me using your terminology why that's immoral?
Because he's violating the consent of all the people he kills, assuming that they weren't consensually being killed.
Right. Probably didn't consent to it.
His behavior would probably also be self-contradictory because if he gets to make up a subjective criteria to kill a bunch of people, then other people could make up their own subjective criteria to kill him. And, and for him to be consistently holding his position, he would have to be willing to be killed based on other people's subjective rule sets.
Except why? Like, he can, from his position.
To be consistent, to be logically consistent.
But why? What if he logically says, yeah, I know I don't want to be treated like this and I just don't give a shit? Like, I'm a predator, you're my victim, screw you. I'm going to try to avoid getting killed while I kill you. And I don't mind that that I'm not treating you the way I want to be treated.
That's every criminal ever.
Yeah. Is there a way to actually explain why that is inherently immoral? You can say that, well, you're wanting for you what you don't want for me, but why is that inherently immoral?
We have to define the word immoral. I tried to do that up front, right? So, morality, we're just applying a label to a set of behaviors, and so how we define moral will determine how you answer that question.
Right. And the thing is, if you're trying to describe objective morality, it sort of means that there is a morality to measure everything again. Like, I think you pretty much said that it isn't changed by like personal opinion and personal preference and all that. It's a thing that's, not a physical thing.
Okay, so maybe we are zeroing in on where we might have a disagreement. So, an objective morality, somebody else could tomorrow, Molyneux, let's play a game. Molyneux could come up with a new WUPB, wacky universally preferable behavior. And he could come up with a new equation that somehow is universalizable, can be used by all people in all times and all places. And you could plug that into my same definition of objective morality. No one has ever found a different equation to plug in that's universalizable.
But even the universalizableness, wow, our words.
That is
universalizableness. Even the universalizableness is assuming something. It's assuming that the standard should be the same for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's telling the criminal, if you don't want that done to you, you shouldn't do that to other people. But even that's based on an assumption. Like, the criminal could say, well, why?
What assumption?
The assumption that it should be fair. That it should be, that it
doesn't have to be fair.
The universalizable.
It's a real word.
My tongue's going to fall out pretty soon. That there's something wrong about having a total double standard, which I think there is, but it's hard to objectively.
I feel like we just changed from moral to wrong. Like we right back in the same problem that we had a minute ago when you said immoral, and I said, well, it depends on how we define morality. Right. So it depends on how we define wrong.
Yeah, and the thing is, to say there's an objective morality, like, you have to sort of decide what morality means. Like, there's an objective something. Okay, well, what does the something mean?
So that feels like we're talking about objective in the second sense of the word, not the third. Like there is one definition of morality.
Okay. I think there is, and it isn't decided by human beings. We try to figure it out, but we don't make it be.
Where does it come? I guess, like, show me the social contract. Like, show it to me. Like, where does this come from?
And that's the thing, is I can't show it to you because I don't know. I can only point to things that to me indicate that the universe has intention in it, that it wants us to be a certain way. And it necessarily, like I said, makes a bunch of logical, metaphysical and all sorts of, I think I used the wrong term, but whatever. All sorts of philosophical problems. But I think without that, it really does just turn into personal preference. Like, if somebody says, well, you guys might like getting along and cooperating, but maybe I just like slaughtering you all and taking your stuff.
Yeah.
And if that's my preference and your preference is getting along peacefully, is there actually a way to prove, if there is no intention, there is no design, there is no whatever you want to call it,
Right.
if there isn't such a thing, how do you prove that it's bad for me to slaughter all of you and good for you to get along? And I think it comes down to being impossible. Either you're just saying, well, the individuals like it that way, or something else has decided it should for
What
us.
does wrong mean in the way you're using it? Like, what does wrong mean when you say?
Well, that's the thing is, I don't think it means anything unless it means contrary to what the universe wants. I don't think there can be another definition of morality that even makes sense, other than just meaning what a certain person or what a certain group of people want.
Well, why do bad guys? Why are bad guys able to ignore the universe's desire? And to not agree with the universe's.
Oh, you mean why are they able to go against it?
Yeah, if it's a universal thing.
Yeah, because it's not like it's sort of like, well, we'll see. I'll make this a question instead of a statement because we might agree on it. I mean, disagree on a million things. Well, I'll ask it and you can point out the 14 different linguistic problems with the question.
Okay.
Do you see in the universe and in nature a tendency for life to want to exist and continue? Not us, but I mean, we're part of it, but just life in general.
I'm trying to ignore
half a dozen linguistic
I don't want to be
problems.
nitpicky. I want to try and get at what you're asking. For life to want to exist. Yeah, life generally, all forms of life tend to heal themselves, tend to reproduce. Now, I don't know if desire, again, we're just mincing words.
Yeah.
Desire is a bad word because that implies some level of sentience that can process or that can want something. But its behavior indicates that it attempts to, let's say it like this, its behavior attempts to continue to survive, right?
Yeah. Now, let me make it more awkward, but probably easier for you to disagree with if you want to.
Okay. I'm not trying to. I'm trying to.
No, I understand.
Yeah, okay,
I understand. That wasn't like a dig or anything.
Okay.
I believe that before there was life on this planet, the universe wanted to make life on this planet. And I don't think it could have happened any other way. I don't, again, half of his words.
How can you say that?
By looking at the actual evidence, and again, this goes back to like the Legos in my living room.
Okay.
Doesn't mean I know what on earth did that or how, but I can look at it and go, that was not by accident.
But how can something that doesn't exist want to exist? That's what you're saying, right? Like
No.
The universe.
No, I'm saying the universe wanted molten rock
Oh, I see.
to later turn into life and to later turn into us.
But for the universe to want something, yeah, I don't get it. I'm sorry. I'm trying. I really tried to steelman you there. I'm not getting it.
And the funny thing is, I don't pretend to all the way get it either.
Okay.
But
All
I look through nature, and someday, I mean, this is another giant topic. Someday I want to do an animated video that actually statistically proves that Richard Dawkins' attempt to explain evolution is completely freaking wrong. And it's the most commonly accepted notion that it's random mutation and then natural selection. Some things die, some things live. The things that live, weird changes happen, not by design, not by intention, but because whatever. And then we have giraffes and aardvarks and everything else. You wait long enough and you have giraffes and aardvarks. I think I can prove that is not at all how it happened. And the funny thing is, it'll pretty much just annoy everybody because I can't at all prove what did it. It's basically like proving someone accused of crime. I can prove he didn't do it. And the obvious question is, well, who did? And my answer is, no freaking idea.
That's fine. You don't have to know.
Right, but part of the scientific process is shooting down a theory that's wrong and go back to the drawing board. And I think I can totally statistically shoot down the theory that what we see now in the natural world, in the biology and life forms all over the place, is just natural selection plus random mutation, which, all the textbooks now say, well, some of them are starting to say, there's some other weird stuff at play. But I think that's just provably wrong. And to me, that's one of the indications, and there are a lot of, including evolutionary biologists, it's not just like preachers and stuff saying it, who look at it and uncomfortably say, I have to say, this doesn't look like you could really get to this level of complexity just by well, this happened to have a little bit more of this, so it survived a little bit better. And
The good enough problem, I think, is what you're alluding to. Like, why didn't evolution stop when it was good enough?
Yeah, that's part of it, but there's also a sophistication. Well, I don't want to try to explain the whole video I want to make, but it was actually going to be computer animated to be able to show there are a bunch of things that those sort of mechanisms can do, and 99% of the world it can't frickin' nearly do. Like, a simple example, we could go on like this for 50 hours, but I'll make this a short version.
Okay.
You have a bunch of moths on an island, everything from very light gray to very dark gray, and there's a bunch of trees and they hide on it and birds eat them and stuff. And then some disease comes along and all the dark trees die. And all the dark moths are like, oh crap, I'm going to get eaten because I show up really well. And the lighter moths are like, we're not, we blend in just fine.
We are now at 100% battery life.
Woohoo!
Well, while we have a break, let's roadmap through what we're going to do. Because
Wander aimlessly in the wilderness.
And I'm fine doing this again, even if you're home. And I think the world needs more of this, personally.
Oh, it's good.
If nothing else, it shows people how to talk through stuff calmly,
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
So you're going to tell me an awesome story. Maybe we reconvene on free will. I'm curious if your conception of free will relates back to this same
It very
universal
much
intent thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's weird and magic and.
So maybe it's part of this, or is it long, or what do you think?
It can.
Do you not want to do it?
It can be almost anything. I mean, I'm up for it.
Oh, okay.
Until his battery dies and his memory cards explode. And
he's already charging the next battery.
Yeah,
he's ahead of us.
But no, one battery lasts about an hour.
Kaysen, any observations from your notes that might bring up something to end it with, or?
No. Only things that
only prolong.
Only things that would probably carry it on. Well, maybe it would expedite the ending as far as clearing up a difference between preferable and preferred. Like able to be preferred, like not a logical contradiction versus.
Whatever people actually prefer.
People.
Okay.
It seems like that you're talking about able to be preferred, all people, all times, all places, and you're referring to what if everybody did prefer it this way? It would still be a logical contradiction. So that may or may not clear up one point of.
Or just add 2 hours to the conversation.
It's hard to say. I can't predict the future.
I was trying to say something that is preferable by people. He's saying the universe intends something. It seems like I'm bottom up, he's top down.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to find a way to make the conversation meet in the middle.
Just in the conversation debunking UPB, it was that, what if people preferred something that would not be generally described as ethical,
right? Which
is where you brought in the candles idea of like, would that make a thing that is currently wrong into something that would be right? And
right.
No, I don't think so, because it would be a logical contradiction because A equals A.
But he responded by saying, so what? Like, why does a logical contradiction mean it's bad?
Right.
And my answer that I didn't say was because that was my definition of morality.
Yeah.
It's violating that equation.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I will butt out because this is y'all's conversation for now.
Already complicating it.
Maybe at dinner we can chat, but no, do your thing.
Okay, you were telling the story.
A story about the black moths.
So, use the example of a bunch of moths. There's an island. We'll make it like a nice closed system. There's an island and there's a species of moth on it. And this one species, it's all the same species, but it varies from very light gray to very dark gray. There's a bunch of different trees and they land on them, and birds are on the island and eat moths and stuff. And some disease comes along and kills all the dark trees. And all the other ones have lighter bark. And suddenly the moths that are dark are more likely to get eaten because they don't have a good hiding place. The other ones may blend in with the bark of the other trees. So the birds eat all the dark moths. So that colony of moths evolved by natural selection, to use that terminology, to have lighter color because the darker ones got eaten. That totally happens. It's what I refer to as analog drift. And, another example, I'll just give one more example. Like, okay, there's something that lives on the plane and it gets chased by something. And the ones with longer legs can run a little bit faster. So the ones with shorter legs tend to get eaten. So that particular gene pool tends to get longer legs over time. Obviously these are very simplified examples. That I could totally see happening. I think that we can even prove happens, and it's kind of obvious. But what most people who accept the mainstream explanation of the mechanism of evolution, and some people say, oh, you don't believe in evolution. Of course there's evolution. I'm saying the mechanism isn't nearly as simple as a lot of people say, which is just random mutation and natural selection. So random mutation and natural selection can make light gray moths and antelopes with longer legs. Very easily, probably happens all over the place in a million different ways. What it can't do is create some weird creative adaptation by accident. For example, a bunch of moths, I forget how many different species, will fly along and they learn to hear bat sonar. And when they hear the blink, they close their wings and drop. And so the bat goes, dunk, there it is, and it misses. Because between the time when it goes boop and the moth goes, ooh crap, and the bat misses. Now, to suggest to me, well, one just happened to be born different and for some freaking reason, it closed its wings and dropped, and gee, it just happened to work out that it didn't get eaten. And it happened to meet another moth that for some random reason happened to be born in such a way that it happened to close its wings and drop when it hears sonar, and they got together and made a bunch of baby moths that happened to have that. It's like, no, that is not how that happened. Well, how did it happen? No frickin' idea. But I can literally describe hundreds of different individual aspects of animal species. I've loved studying animals and all the weird magic stuff they do. Magic just meaning, I don't know how they do it. I could literally give hundreds of examples of things that you can't get to by way of, well, it happened to be a little more in that direction. Like the moths happen to be lighter. That works. Antelopes happen to have longer, this one was born with slightly longer legs, that was born with slightly shorter. There's sort of a range, there's an analog range, and those ones are going to be preferred by, natural selection. But almost every species has a bunch of different individual aspects that you literally can't get to by way of accidentally getting a little bit there. So you can have the analog drift like gray moths and long-legged antelopes, but all over the place you have things you can't get to in tiny little steps. And you can't nearly get to in tiny little steps that accidentally happened, and then the ones that accidentally happened found each other and had babies. They quick ran off from all the other ones, because if they hang around the same population and you mate with another moth that doesn't go blunk gunk when it hears sonar, well, you're just going to have normal babies, and that one fluke doesn't do any good. The number of really weird things that have to happen thousands of times in a row to get these very creative adaptations is just impossible. You can't get there by way of random mutation plus natural selection. Those things happen in very limited ways, like the moths and the antelopes, but you just can't explain literally 99% of the qualities of different species and the weird creative things they do. They do things so creative that a person couldn't think it up, and certainly the individual animal didn't think it up. The moth isn't going along going, I bet that if he's doing sonar and hearing the reflect, I don't think the individuals are doing it. I think it's something way weirder than that. And I almost don't even want to describe it because it's so weird to me. I actually think species have sort of an overall, a species-wide consciousness almost, that is now I have to get into this. All right, super short version. If you look at us up close and you zoom in, it's there's a cell. It's a living organism. There's another cell right next to it. And then there's a blood cell, and there's a this cell, and there's a skin cell, and there's a that thing. And if you're zoomed in and somebody says to you, yeah, those are all little living things, and they all have their little guts and doing their thing, cumulatively, they're conscious. It's what the hell are you talking about? Only you are the thing that is cumulatively conscious, made up of all those little things. So we personally experience, I'm not any one of these cells, and I'm not even a bunch of individual cell consciousnesses in a big group. I'm some weird thing that comes out of the grand total of these. And I think there's sort of a parallel in whole species that figure stuff out that no individual could ever figure out. And the mechanism, I have no idea, but it drives adaptation that is so ingeniously creative that you see all over the place in nature, like predators figuring out a new way to trick the prey, and prey figuring out a new way to hide, and predators figuring out a way to get around the new way that the prey just learned to hide, and prey figuring out a new way to get around the way that the predators just figured out. And none of it is from individual intelligence, and it sure as hell is not from accidental chance, followed by some of them lived and some of them died.
And just make it explicit for me, how does this relate to objective morality?
Because it says the universe is trying to do shit.
Okay.
And how and what it is that's even trying it. But that screams to me intention. And now there's more and more evolutionary biologists who say, kind of looks like intention. And usually everybody goes, shut up, you're evil. Because it's just too weird a thing to say, because intention implies an intender. Just like, it looks like it's designed. Well, that implies a designer. And then they get bashed because that's too weird a thing to say if people are thinking, well, scientist equals materialist. Mm. And I think the materialists are just provably wrong. But again, I don't know what the explanation is. I can just point to lots of examples of how the explanation of the materialists and the moral nihilists just don't work. They don't even work in biology, much less humanity.
So, couch this in language of religion. Are you agnostic, Gnostic?
When even that's complicated, because when people ask me whether I believe in God, my answer is usually, whatever you call God, I almost certainly don't believe in. What I believe in is...
I didn't mean to bring up God. I meant to use the terminology of, is this something that you believe to be true? Is it something that you believe is a possibility? Or is it something that you're sure isn't? Like, you know,
I absolutely believe there is this force that I know approximately 0% about.
Okay.
Which is kind of a pain in the ass.
Then why do you believe that, though?
Because of the evidence I see. Okay. Like if I look in nature, it's like the Lego house. There was intention there, and I know nothing else about it. And I look in nature all over the place, and I was like, something by way of something had intention there. And I don't know I don't know the mechanism it changed stuff. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it is. I don't know what it functions. But I see the fingerprint of design all over the place that you can't get to by random selection. And it doesn't mean I have any idea or explanation. Like, I could stick a label on it and most people go, that's God. It's like, well, that didn't do anything. You just gave a name for a thing you don't know anything about. And so, like, I could stick a name on it if you want, but that's not going to do anything.
I'm trying to avoid, like, debating your analogy of evolution. Because I swear I remember this Dawkins video where he described how something as complex as the human eye evolved in tiny, tiny little baby steps.
I've seen him try.
And so it wasn't just like a pop. It was like first they just had like a cell that emitted, a tiny electromagnetic signal when it captured photons.
Right.
And then that became several cells.
Yep.
And,
I've seen that exact one.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, what do you say to that?
I think he fudges the hell out of the data in order to desperately try to have there not be a designer. I think with him in particular, and I don't apply this to everybody who believes in this stuff, I think with him it literally is a religious belief that there cannot be intention in the universe.
Okay. And
he starts with that premise and he mangles the hell out of the evidence and the logic. And that's what I want to do my animated video to demonstrate. Believing that random mutation plus natural selection explains all life on Earth, you have to be trying really hard to deny the existence of design and intention to even pretend that that's anywhere near scientific. And there are a bunch of evolutionary biologists who say that, and most of the other ones say, shut up. And then that gets linked into like religious people and stuff, and it gets, because I think that, the people who believe in creation, like, way to be the only thing that could be less accurate. Like,
so maybe part 2 of this conversation could just be diving into all of the evidence that you see for this universal intention. And
Yeah.
Just make it nothing to do with me having a conversation. I'll just interview you and let you tell us what all the evidence are, so that
Okay.
I can try, I don't know, pushing back on it and see.
Yeah, and
see what
I
happens.
like the pushing back. And the thing of biology is just sort of a parallel to, like I said, I think life is one step and humanity is actually a discrete, different thing. Even though we're also the animal. Just like an animal is still made of stuff. He didn't stop being matter.
Yeah.
And the matter is still energy. It didn't stop being, it just, now it's so organized it's matter. And now it's so organized and intricate it's life. And now it's so organized and intricate it's life that contains consciousness on our level. And it just becomes more and more complex. And to me, that so much of reality, and I'll just end on this, so much of reality demonstrates that, yes, there is the force of entropy in the universe, and there's some weird magical thing, and I don't know how it works, and it kicks entropy's ass over and over and over again. And if you wander through the Amazon rainforest, you look around and go, this is not entropy. This is a level of sophistication and complexity that's just miraculously way beyond what even human beings can create and invent. And we have these big, huge brains to invent stuff. And still, the average little bug walking by is 1,000 times more complex than anything we've ever made. Something other than entropy is doing that. Something pushes in the other direction. I don't know what it is. I just see a lot of evidence that it's something.
Okay. Well, this is fascinating. I would call myself an agnostic at this point on your theory of the universal intent,
Perfectly fair.
but I would very much like to hear more about it in part 2. Will you join me again for this?
Absolutely.
Wherever we are. Right now we're in a resort, and we should probably be out there being resort
Yeah.
goers.
Selling books and such.
Oh, yeah, do that. All right, guys. Be aware that Larken Rose has a brand new awesome service that you can sign up to called the Rose Channel. I think it's something you can subscribe to, and you can literally get almost every word he's ever said or published in this one subscription. Like all the little daily rants, the audiobook of Dangerous Superstition, the Candles in the Dark seminar, all of it for a low monthly fee, therosechannel.com. Anything else you want to say?
Nope, I'm exhausted, so I've said enough.
Well, dude, thanks for, we need more of this in the world, these conversations.
Been a blast.
All right,
Yeah.
cool. Thanks, guys.